This video is sponsored by my lovely patrons. On June 12th, Sabrina Carpenter announced that her new album, Man's Best Friend, would be coming out in August, and shared the album's cover art on Instagram, and it has caused quite a stir online. And I'll be honest, the first time I saw it, I kind of just rolled my eyes. She's known for her twisted sense of humor, if you will, and getting a lot of flack for being overly sexual at her shows, as well as known for being a provocateur. So I saw this and immediately just thought, that's what this is. The album cover is this way to simply generate buzz, and buzz it has generated. Heck, here I am, jumping on the bandwagon with my 2 cents. And the reason why this cover art has become so contentious is because of how it doesn't exist in a vacuum. Many have pointed out how it glamorizes domestic violence, is purposefully reminiscent of sexist vintage ads that demean women, and how the satire falls completely flat. Showing women as bitches and as man's best friend by reproducing sexist imagery, but a woman's doing it so it's fine, hasn't gone over very well, and many women are sick of this pop feminist bullshit. One of my online friends and longtime mutuals, Gia, actually mentioned how it would have been more interesting if she was at least holding a knife up to his crotch, and I wholeheartedly agree. Whereas many fans and viewers were okay with the Eiffel Tower Juno pose and other risque moments at her live shows and in her lyrics, this crossed the line for some people, and I think it's important to understand why this is different. So in this video I want to explore that, as well as talk about my own mixed feelings about the cover art and why I also understand the backlash to the backlash. So let's get into it. Sabrina Carpenter is far from the only female pop star who's been called out for glamorizing domestic abuse and sexist imagery. Blackpink comes to mind when they did a photo shoot with bruises for the Kill This Love photo cards, as well as, of course, Lana Del Rey with her discography. Most notably, He Hit Me and It Felt Like a Kiss from Ultraviolence, but others as well, like Off to the Races with the line, "My old man is a bad man, but I can't deny the way he holds my hand and he grabs me, he has me by my heart." And Lana Del Rey has been called out so much for glorifying toxic and abusive relationships that she felt the need to pen a letter to the culture asking if she can finally stop being criticized for singing about problematic relationship dynamics, while also throwing many artists of color and Ariana Grande under the bus in the process. Hashtag girl power. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Sabrina pens an open letter next, considering the amount of retaliation she's facing. But this reaction from many viewers and fans doesn't come from nowhere. The reason the album cover feels so tiresome is because it's 2025 and women in the US and around the world are witnessing their rights being stripped away. That's not to say that Carpenter can't be open about being submissive and sexual, but to have this as the album cover at this point in time to many is highly insensitive. Are we saying it's okay to lean into this imagery as long as a woman's doing it in a cheeky way? Does that make it feminist? Progressive? Feminists have a right to call this out as regressive because in so many ways it harkens back to an era where women were viewed as objects, and that is at its most generous interpretation, because at its worst it trivializes domestic violence. Not to mention, where do these submission fantasies come from? Many women would argue that they're given to us by men. We are not born submissive. Additionally, this doesn't really work to satirize anything, if it's even satire at all. And if it's not, then to many it's just repurposing tired sexist tropes. And I can imagine there might be some men out there that are happy that she's playing into this, as it furthers their cause. Women do actually enjoy this. What's the problem if I treat my girlfriend this way? Many have pointed out online, what will seeing this image do to young girls? What message are we telling and selling to them? It's not like hidden away in photo cards you have to actively seek out, or in music you have to listen to. It's right there on the cover art. And for me personally, I have mixed feelings about it, and I say all of this as a pretty big follower and fan of her music. I'm a huge fan of Manchild that just dropped. Like, I was there for the YouTube premiere, and I love the iconography. I think she tapped into such a shared feeling that a lot of young girls have of wanting to hit the open road, and like this fantasy of going on these adventures with older men. It was in Hick from 2011, Almost Famous from 2000, Lolita, I'm specifically thinking of the 1997 adaptation, that was all over Tumblr back in the day, and even Lana Del Rey's Born to Die video. But in Manchild, it's more of like a fun adventure than something dark, and I really like that. She's very culturally aware, so it makes me wonder why she's okay with this promotion and artwork. At the same time, she did say to Rolling Stone that she feels pressure to be funny. She said when talking about the criticism she receives for singing about and referencing sex so much in her work, I find irony and humor in all of that because it seems to be a recurring theme. I'm not upset about it other than I feel mad pressure to be funny sometimes. So I think this was another attempt at her humor that just really fell flat. At the same time, though I do think all of these criticisms are valid and that the artwork isn't good and further does normalize outdated sexist imagery, I also think that the backlash to the backlash makes sense too, though of course you don't need to agree with me. So let's discuss the counter-arguments that are in favor or defensive of the cover. The first one being, not everything a woman does is feminist, and that's fine. So Sabrina Carpenter fits a very specific mold in popular music, which is the young blonde who sings about relationships and sex and being sexy, and then is immediately villainized by the public for doing so. Carpenter recently said to Rolling Stone, "I don't want to be pessimistic, but I truly feel like I've never lived in a time where women have been picked apart more, and scrutinized in every capacity. I'm not just talking about me, I'm talking about every female artist that is making art right now. White women singing about sex sells, but the artists themselves can't be sexual, and if they are, they're slut shamed for it. It's this horrible sexist cycle that even beautiful, desirable white women are put through." And I think that's because men and some slut shaming women feel the need to neg them and bring them down a peg so they don't get too much self-confidence and power. Women are not allowed to own their sexuality. And on top of this, there's this added pressure to be a good influence and role model. And this isn't necessarily new either. Britney Spears was called out for not being a good role model in 2003 by Diane Sawyer, even though she said in 2001 she doesn't want to be considered a role model. In 2001, ABC reported on her comments like this: "We haven't exactly thought of Britney Spears as an innocent little girl for some time, but that isn't stopping the teen bombshell from wanting to appear even more adult. I don't want to be considered a role model," the 19-year-old bottle blonde said Friday at the TV Critics Association summer gathering. She described her upcoming live concert special from the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, which will air November 18th on HBO, as an event and promised that it will be shocking and edgier than anything she's done before, including apparently her super sexed up booty shaking at MTV's Video Music Awards last year. Some great journalism there. But in 2025, as a woman, you shouldn't just be a good influence, you should also adhere to feminist values. So many are surprised at how could a woman like Sabrina Carpenter make this anti-feminist album cover and title. She's not a good role model. She's not a feminist. And to that I say, when did she ever say she was a feminist? And did anyone ever think she was one to begin with? I didn't. And again, pop stars aren't role models. I think it's taken for granted that because you're a woman, you're also for female liberation. But no, that's not necessarily true, especially for white women who benefit the most from the patriarchy. But I also don't think she's against female empowerment. I just don't think all artwork done by a woman is inherently feminist, nor does it need to be. I don't go into a woman's work with those expectations. I think with the mainstream public's embracing of pop feminism, it's worked to overcorrect past sexism to protect women from unfair judgment by saying that all art and actions made by a woman is inherently feminist and empowering. But at the end of the day, that's not true, and women should be able to critique one another without this facade. By uplifting pop feminism and choice feminism, we've embraced a paradox where women have these unfair expectations of them of needing to be feminist, but can also hide behind feminism to not have to deal with fair critiques of their actions and works. It's a heavy expectation for female artists to have thrust upon them that they have to be feminist, but at the same time, convenient to say I'm a woman, therefore X, Y, or Z is feminist, when they don't want to face the music, if you forgive my pun. Carpenter hasn't addressed the backlash, and I doubt she will, but I just think it's interesting how in overcorrecting for past wrongs to make ourselves more vigilant of sexism, that led to both women having unfair expectations to be perfect and empowering, but also to, at times, be used as something to hide behind. But I guess that's what happens when you embrace a radical movement under capitalist patriarchy. In the end, I think it's fair to critique the cover art as anti-feminist, as she is reproducing historical sexist imagery on purpose, so that does play into a bigger systemic issue. But at the same time, when it comes to a female artist's work, I just don't think we should go into it with this expectation that just because someone's a woman, they're also a feminist. We need to get rid of this pop feminist paradox that both expects everything done by a woman to be feminist, but also when something isn't feminist, defenders can hide behind this idea that it is actually feminist because it's done by a woman, because no one wins in that scenario. Female artists aren't here to save women or be good feminist role models, but also can be critiqued as anti-feminist in good faith Both can be true. Overall, I think this clash between the personal and the political that this cover represents is a reason why a lot of people are okay with the Eiffel Tower Juno pose, for example, and other parts of her performances and her overall baby doll aesthetic, but not the cover art, because that's just inherently replicating misogyny, whereas showing a woman enjoying sex or being promiscuous isn't. However, to counter this role model argument, one could say the personal is political. Pop stars, celebrities, influencers with big platforms, they have a responsibility to the public to be the best they can be. They owe their fans that much. And honestly, I don't have an answer for this, but generally I do think that wealthy people with influence, even pop stars, should have a moral compass and values in order to be respected by the general public and by their fans. If you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. The second counter argument to the backlash is that some women like this dynamic, they like this fantasy, and to be submissive in sex and relationships, and that's okay. It's not revolutionary or feminist, but some women like it, and that doesn't make them sexist, so why is Sabrina getting hate for that? When women own their sexuality or declare what they like in the bedroom, why are they being demonized for that? And I agree a lot with this counterpoint, which is a reason why I don't have too many problems with the cover art. I know the imagery isn't great and could have been a lot better, but how can we just never talk about this? I'm always reading these think pieces about how we need to make movies sexy again. We miss sex in pop culture, but then when something is actually sexy in one of the most vanilla fantasy ways, in my opinion, people hate on it. So I get that criticism, and I have to say again, I agree with it. We live in such a messed up misogynistic society that the only way to explore sexual fantasies for women in mainstream art is through a patriarchal lens, and to frame female sexual liberation under the male gaze. And that's how a lot of girls and young women are introduced to their own sexuality. And that's really fucked up and does need to change, but at the same time, this art is there to help us cope with the male fantasies we're given to as girls. It's like that quote from the You series finale. The fantasy of a man like you is how we cope with the reality of a man like you. Fantasies we might not want in real life, but may be curious about. And through fiction, we can explore those taboos. And maybe Sabrina Carpenter will be a girl's sexual awakening, or open that conversation for them and their friends, and it will be flawed because of the patriarchal undertones, but I do think it exists for a reason, and I do think it's important for it to come from other women rather than from men, because women have those fantasies too, even if we may not be born with them. The way we as teen girls and as young women deal with sexual expectations of us, like the age gap fantasy and other problematic relationship dynamics, is through fiction. Even fiction made by other women. And if we can't have that accessible in the mainstream, I think that would be a major loss, in my opinion. Especially since we're all for male pop stars and singers awakening young girls' sexuality and interest in romance, but when a woman does it, she's demonized because it's not feminist of her. And I agree, these are not feminist and revolutionary fantasies and imagery, and maybe we should be promoting healthier relationship dynamics in music for girls, but this type of problematic art made by women is a way to cope with the world around us. And again, a lot of women like to be submissive in sex and relationships, and I don't think that makes them sexist. Women should be able to talk about what they want in sex and relationships with other women, and at the end of the day, I think that's why this album cover didn't offend me as much as it may have other people. If we're looking just at the idea of fantasy in entertainment and pop culture, I don't see anything wrong with the album cover art. Women should be allowed to be sexual and show what they are into, because women need a space to do that. And though I know the art is copying outdated vintage sexism, I do think it's different when a woman does it. Not that it means that it's feminist by any means, but it's not the same as if a man was directing her to do this. I think many women in art play out these taboo fantasies in order to help themselves and their audience explore things that are expected of them under patriarchy, but also things they might be into but are taboo. People like to explore social transgressions, especially young people, and more importantly young women who are constantly told who to be and how to act. You could call it internalized misogyny, but I also think that women are capable of having these fantasies apart from that, and at least should be able to explore these expectations in pop culture and fiction and art from a safe distance. That's why I feel like I can understand where both sides of this debate are coming from. And from what I've seen of Carpenter, she is very intentional about her music and and artistic direction, and though the cover wasn't funny and pretty bad satire if it was even supposed to be satire, I do have high hopes for the album. It's hard to measure the impact the cover will have, or any work of fiction or fantasy has on the general public. How much will this hurt or set women back? How much does this normalize sexism? How much of it is internalized misogyny? It's complicated and I don't have all the answers. I just know that my own feelings about it are mixed. Let me know what you think down below, and thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to my patrons. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.